In the southern Spanish city of Malaga, local archaeology students are brushing away 70 years of dirt, revealing a time when Spain was at war with itself. A war where 7 decades on, the number killed is still disputed. Some say 250,000, others contend as many as 1 million died. And only now is this mass grave from the war being exhumed. They're digging away at history.
El libro de la historia de España tiene unas páginas en blanco que no se han llenado nunca solamente por la parte de la dictadura, y entendemos que ya es hora de que se escriba la historia de la otra parte también.
But uncovering the past is painful, and some fear it'll divide Spain again.
Le metieron fuego a la cárcel. Y ardiendo, dispararon por las ventanas. Le pegaron un tiro en el vientre. Ya, tío.
In 1936, General Francisco Franco led a military uprising against Spain's elected left-wing government. He embraced fascism. Here he is meeting Hitler. German planes bombed Spanish cities to help him. Franco's victory in the Civil War ushered in a period of dictatorship and repression which ended only with his death in 1975.
Franco was a historic mistake of Spain's. Spain could have made it to the 20th century much earlier. Spain didn't make it to the 20th century, as far as I'm concerned, until economically probably until the mid-60s, politically definitely until 1978 with our constitution.
Just a few years after Franco's death, Spain became a democracy. It's been a rapid transition. So on a quiet Sunday morning in the back streets of Malaga, it's difficult to conjure a vision of Spain at war. Between 1936 and 1939, here and across the country, it was neighbour against neighbour. No one disputes that there were atrocities on both sides in the Spanish Civil War, though people do argue about the numbers. In the early months of the conflict, when Republicans held control here, one estimate is that about 1,000 people were executed for their nationalist sympathies. So when the Nationalists won Malaga in February 1937, reprisals quickly followed.
Y va la policía, detiene a mi padre el día 6 y se lo llevan detenido. Le dice a mi madre que no se preocupe, que va a hacer unas declaraciones.
In Malaga, many accused of Republican sympathies were brought here, to the San Rafael Cemetery, then lined up against this wall and shot. Among them, Francisco Espinosa's Republican father.
Pasa por el Consejo de Guerra junto con un grupo de compañeros también, y son condenados a muerte y ejecutados el día 9 aquí en el cementerio de San Rafael, en las tapias del cementerio.
In all, about 3,600 were killed here and dumped in a mass grave. Not all at once. The process took months. It was systematic and calculated. As Francisco Espinosa explains, Republicans on the left of politics had earlier shot nationalists from the right on the same spot.
También fusilaron los republicanos a gente de derecha, que esa gente de derecha la sacaron en el año 37 cuando entraron en Málaga y están en la catedral, y durante muchos años ha habido en todos los sitios la cruz de los caídos por Dios y por España.
So in part, this is about honouring the dead from the losing side long after the winners have had their day. But it's also political, because Spain's governing Socialist Party wants to help people not only identify the remains of relatives, but offer compensation to victims of Franco's repression. This is Val de los Caídos, the Valley of the Fallen. Franco ordered it built as a national monument to the war dead. In the end, he was buried here too, and that's one of its problems. His remains lie beneath the floor of the basilica, and Francoists old and new come here every year on the anniversary of his death to remember him. There are flowers. They give their little fascist salutes. And all of this, the annual presence of a few thousand political fringe dwellers and simple nostalgics, has given the place a very bad name. This is all that's left these days of the Phalange, the fascist political party that supported Franco. The Valley of the Fallen is where they come to pay homage to the dictator. And one thing the government hopes to do with its new law is to somehow turn this place into a truly representative war memorial.
This civil war.
Juan Antonio Barrio de Penagos is a government MP.
Obviously, this is a symbol for the nostalgics of the dictatorship. It's not a symbol to say, well, this is a documental center or something like that. It's a symbol where there are different people buried. And indeed, the Valley of Caídos is only for Franco.
The government's opponents say that with its flag-waving neo-fascists and Francoist diehards, the Valley of the Fallen means nothing to most Spaniards, whatever their history or current politics. So why make it an issue?
You have never seen a single member of a democratic Spanish political party go to the Valley of the Fallen since Franco died. Never in these 30 years of Spanish democracy has a single serious Spanish politician been seen in the Valley of the Fallen.
Indeed, what's striking is how few obvious physical reminders of Franco remain. In a small apartment in Madrid, there is the Franco Foundation. Not a shrine as such, a research facility, according to its president Felix Morales, who also tells me the Valley of the Fallen isn't a memorial to Franco.
Todo se ha desmesurado. Aquello no es justamente ni siquiera el mausoleo de Franco. Franco no decide que su enterramiento sea allí.
But then adds that it makes sense as the dictator's final resting place.
Nunca han sido objeto de debate hasta ahora. Y es un debate falso. Es el debate que está montándose en España en estos instantes de falsificación de un tiempo de la historia, de manera que naturalmente puede incluirse también la cuestión de que si Franco allí puede estar o no legalmente. Lo está en todos los órdenes, puesto porque él hace aquello.
It's certainly a fair bet that Franco would struggle to reconcile today's Spain with the one he left in 1975. When the dictatorship ended, both left and right in Spanish politics agreed that building democracy was more important than settling old scores.
I think that one of the most important things that Spain ever made was its transition, and we've got to honor that transition because it's not just the king and certain politicians that were the architects of that transition, it's actually the whole Spanish people.
For Francisco Espinosa, it's about honouring a father he never knew, and it's a painstaking process. Each set of remains from the mass grave in Malaga goes into a numbered box, and DNA tests will try to match them to the living.
Y se podría decir, bueno, pues la caja número 300 o la caja número 400 corresponde a tu familia, a tu padre o a la persona familiar.
It's also about more than honouring a memory. Francisco Espinosa wants the records changed so that people executed without a proper trial will have their convictions quashed.
Luego hay otro tema que también queremos tocar más adelante y es en los consejos de guerra lo escriben los vencedores, ¿no? Entonces no había una defensa de la persona que sentenciaban, ¿no? A mi padre en el consejo de guerra lo ponen como elemento peligroso, ¿no? Un carpintero, bueno, pues yo no sé hasta qué punto, ¿no?
But righting past wrongs is easier said than done. There are records of those shot and dumped here, but in many other cases there aren't, regardless of which side they were on.
Estaban en la cárcel.
In a Malaga restaurant, I met men who all had relatives killed by Republicans. Ángel Rosso García didn't know his father.
Mi padre sencillamente era un trabajador. Se quedó huérfano muy joven.
His father was killed in the early months of the war.
Y no volvió. Se lo llevaron a la cárcel. Estuvo allí desde julio hasta el 23 de septiembre, que cuando vieron que las tropas nacionales van a tomar el pueblo, le metieron fuego a la cárcel. Y ardiendo, dispararon por las ventanas. Le pegaron un tiro en el vientre.
José Sánchez Rosso was only 4 months old when Republicans killed 42 people in his village, including a cousin and an uncle. These men don't want to revisit this period.
De malo nunca puede ser honrar a los muertos, nunca. Lo que si junto a honrar a los muertos está removiendo situaciones políticas, ¿qué dirían los muertos si pudieran hablar? A lo mejor no estaban de acuerdo.
For the past 20 years, Francisco Espinosa has been combing the local archive. In Franco's time, he couldn't do it.
Sabemos precisamente el inicio de la detención de este hombre, su estancia en la cárcel y su juicio y su posterior ejecución. Y eso no es reabrir heridas, es abrir unos documentos que han estado ocultos durante muchos años.
Among the government's proposals is that archives be reorganised so people can find out what happened. But even on this point, one man's search for historical truth is another's political witch hunt.
Bueno, va a afectar en los sentimientos de los españoles, está afectando, por eso estamos aquí. Y le pedimos, pues en este caso el que tenga el concepto religioso a su Dios y al buen entendimiento de los españoles para que esto no se cardee más.
The Spanish Parliament's debating the bill's final form. The main opposition, the Popular Party, wants it thrown out. The Socialists say that proves the opposition are still closet Francoists.
Really, the Popular Party never condemned the dictatorship. They agree with a general condemn of the unfair procedures and so on, but not with the condemn of the dictatorship, of the Franco's dictatorship as a whole.
Franco is dead. He died in bed. Nobody removed him from power. Nobody in Spain, be it the Democrats from the right or the left, were capable, able, willing, or courageous enough, and let's face it, courageous enough, to overthrow Franco and his dictatorship.
Usted es joven por el habla. Digo, yo sí, yo soy un joven con 69 años ya.
Just about every Spaniard has a story of the war. Many would rather these stories were not told. Francisco Espinosa wants to tell the story of a father he believes was unjustly killed.
Si se le pregunta a personas arraigadas todavía en el franquismo, es normal que digan de que lo que queremos es abrir viejas heridas, reavivar el franquismo o fantasmas y tal. Eso no es real, eso no es real.
But the Franco years still cast a giant shadow, and that's one reason why so many Spaniards would rather the past remained buried.